Welcome to another Endeavour Plus geography video with Mr. Geraghty, here to talk about the importance of having proof or evidence in our examination answers. Please note, this video is intended as an overview, not a practice video. If you want to do some case study specific practice, then I recommend going to a different video relevant to the case study you wish to practice. A quick disclaimer before we begin is that just listening to these instructions will not magically make your grades improve. You must practice what is in this video if you wish to see improvement. A quick reminder on the importance of having proof, or why it is that we do this. To begin, we are a scientific-based subject. That means all of ideas are based on evidence that has been collected out in the field. Data that has been collected to prove or disprove our ideas one way or the other. It allows you to talk like an expert, to show that you have not only the idea of the science of geography and what is actually happening in the world, but you have the real life examples to refer to that back you up, which is exactly how an expert treats their subject. Within the examination itself, it earns you the respect of the examiner. When they read through your work and see that you back up your ideas with proof and evidence, they immediately begin to respect your knowledge and begin to look for more marks to award you. And finally, it sometimes helps to make your work a bit more understandable by having an example to go with to outline how the idea unfolds in the real world. Here I'm going to go through an overview of the physical geography topics that we've taught you throughout the curriculum. They are, of course, the challenge of natural hazards, the ecosystems of the living world, both small and large, and landscapes, more specifically those we find at the coast and those we find along the riverbank. Looking at their respective case studies, in hazards we looked specifically at earthquakes, one that occurred in New Zealand and one that occurred in Nepal. These case studies are useful because they both have a magnitude of 7.8. New Zealand being a high-income country and Nepal being a low-income country, it is useful to compare and contrast the impacts and responses that two levels of development have on the responses to an earthquake. For the storms, we looked at the much larger storm of Typhoon Haiyan, which struck the Philippines on the west side of the Pacific Ocean. Here in the UK, we looked at the Somerset Levels flooding down in southwest England, where prolonged rainfall of about a month's worth in about 3 days greatly saturated and flooded the land. For our ecosystems, we have a small-scale ecosystem in the Slapton Lea reed bed, very similar to a freshwater pond, if you will. In terms of our big scale or big biome environments, we of course looked at the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, South America. We have of course also looked at the polar and tundra cold environment of Alaska in the far north of North America. Now for our landscapes case studies, we split them a bit differently. We of course look at coasts and the rivers in terms of the shapes and the ways in which we manage these environments. In terms of the forms and shapes that we can see along these environments, for the coasts we look along Dorset, which is in southeast England, at the cracks, cave, arches, stacks and stumps that we find, along with the headlands and bays, often made by a series of deposition and erosion. Whilst along the river, we find that the River Clyde in Scotland is perfect for showing the different landforms of such as V-shaped valleys, meanders, oxbow lakes and waterfalls journeying from source to mouth. In terms of how we manage these two environments, for the coast we looked at Lyme Regis, also in Dorset, southeast England, and for the river we look at Oxford in the south of England, where two rivers join into one. Now for our human topics, we of course have urbanisation and the growth of cities around the world, development and the change in the economies around the world, and the challenge of resourcing the growing human populations. For urbanisation, we'll look at a city in an HIC and a city in a newly emerging economy. Our HIC is of course the UK, and we look at the city of Liverpool. Whilst our newly emerging economy is Nigeria, and the city we look at is Lagos. In terms of sustainability, we do also look at the city of Curitiba, which is in Brazil, as a way of comparing to the other sustainable strategies attempted in cities like Liverpool. Over in development, we of course have our city of Liverpool again, since it represents a city in an HIC. In terms of a city in a newly emerging economy, we actually then turn to India, where we look at the city of New Delhi. In terms of resourcing, we look at the UK and how we collect food, gather water, and produce energy. We also look at the newly emerging economy of China, and more specifically, how they handle and supply their own water. It is also worth noting that for the paper 3 in geography, we will be analysing fieldwork. For one part, we will be looking at fieldwork data that it is supplied, and we have to look at our own fieldwork, where of course we went to New Brighton. With the overview said and done, I recommend you go to another video where you might be able to get in some revision practice. Best of luck.